All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Thursday morning here on the game. Do have a couple of things going out there on the roadway. Have an accident at I-20 westbound and Monticello Road, so expect some slowdowns in that area. Also have another one at I-77 southbound and Forest Drive that is out by exit number 12 as well. And of course, you have your usual road construction going on too. Going to be a lot warmer today with a high of 77, currently 64 in downtown Columbia here on the game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on the game. Jack, that Monday holiday is still throwing me off. I have to keep thinking about the day because I want to say Wednesday, but it's Thursday, and that is a nice thing because the week is farther along than you think it is. Tomorrow's Friday, and boom, we're right back at the weekend.
Oddly enough, it does feel like Thursday, at least to me. I don't know what it is. Maybe because we've had baseball the last 2 days, and I know there's no game today, and then you get a game tomorrow. So maybe that's part of it now that we're in a routine here. But, yeah, I don't know. Like last week, the days just felt all clumped together. And because what was it? We had the snow. We had snow last week, right? Or
no, that was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Funny enough, think about this. Last weekend, so not this past Sunday, the prior Sunday, was the Super Bowl. Does that not feel like it was 3 months ago now?
Yeah, it does. It does because there's been no football since then. It's the oddest thing. Like I don't know what it is. It's like forced perspective, but in our brain. Like I don't know what it is about why it just feels like it's so long ago. But yeah, and we're just now into the thick of things. But yeah, the week somehow feels normal for me compared to you, I guess. So.
Well, and I think last week it also didn't help the fact that we didn't have any midweek men's or women's basketball.
Yeah.
So you didn't really have those things kind of in the middle of the week to help bridge the gap a little bit. And obviously we're looking forward to like women's basketball taking on LSU. We'll get to some of those numbers coming up here in a little bit. But yeah, this week has been obviously action-packed. I got women's basketball in action tonight taking on Alabama. And yeah, for the past 2 days, you've had baseball in action, which is where we're going to start with last night's game right after, of course, as we do every day at 9 o'clock, kicking things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Jack, when you look at midweek games in baseball specifically, and you say, all right, Carolina's going to take on a team like Gardner-Webb. If you didn't watch the game, you look at the box score and say, all right, it was a game they won by 10 runs in an 8-inning run rule. You say, that's exactly how those games are supposed to go. So out of the 5 games they played so far, last night definitely felt like the most refreshing of those 5 games.
Felt like the team that this can be, right? At least from an offensive standpoint. Pitching, bullpen was great last night. Let's not get that twisted. The only thing last night that I think was an issue was Bradley Hodges on the mound getting the start, and he's a midweek starter. So I don't think it's as big of a deal if it's one of your weekend guys going out there and getting a little bit hit around in his limited appearance. But overall, last night, really good game for South Carolina. And the thing is, it's Gardner-Webb. You know, you're doing this against Wofford and Gardner-Webb, teams that you're supposed to beat. But you know, there's this perception out there that midweeks don't matter. Some people do feel that way because if you lose those games, it's like it's whatever. Then you got other people that midweeks are really important, and you can't lose those games. And South Carolina was great in midweek games last year. For all their faults, they were so good at winning those midweek games. They only lost one last year, and that was against North Carolina, a really good team. But, yeah, last night and the day before, they've hit so much better. They obviously worked on hitting with runners in scoring position during Monday's practice, and we don't really have the details of what that all looked like in practice. We've heard Mainieri talk about it a few times. We've heard the players now talk about it. But whatever it was, it's worked. They've hit so much better since then, 9 for 25 in the last 2 games with runners in scoring position. Sorry to tease out a little stat there that we'll talk about in the next segment. But, yeah, they hit a lot better last night. When you score 12 runs and you have 17 hits, that's a really good night. And it wasn't just – that's the other thing, Tyler. It wasn't just the home runs flying out of the ballpark. Like, this is definitely not just a home run happy offense. This is a much more balanced attack. And I'm not ready to – anoint this is a great offense yet, but especially now that we see some guys are getting going, especially Logan Sutter last night getting that home run in the 8th inning. It came in garbage time, but let me just tell you, that might be the swing that turns things around for that guy, because he had, even Mainieri mentioned it, he didn't have a single extra base hit in the fall or preseason. This is a guy that came into the year as like your best transfer portal bat, and he could rake extra base hit machine at Purdue. We finally saw that last night, and you hope now it can kind of translate, as for the rest of this offense, into a good weekend coming up.
Well, I want to go back to a point that you made a moment ago where, there's a perception that midweek games don't matter. They don't until they do, if that makes sense, right? Like, yeah, if you're a dominant team that's going to run roughshod through the SEC and be a lock as a nationally hosting seed, then yeah, the midweek games at the end of the day don't mean a whole lot. But if you're a team like South Carolina that we don't know how good you're going to be in the SEC and we think your margin for error is razor thin, making sure you handle your business against the Woffords, against the Gardner-Webbs, teams like this, vitally important to building whatever kind of resume you're going to have by the end of May to try and get yourself in that tournament. And if you were to theoretically lose last night to Gardner-Webb, those kind of things could be the difference between making the field of 64 and not making it.
Exactly. Like, you need to get as many wins as you can, and I don't know exactly how much a loss would kill your RPI, but it wouldn't be good to lose these types of games. Like, you can survive it, like you said, Tyler, if you play well in your conference. But for South Carolina last year, they played really well in midweek games, but they struggled in conference play. So it kind of canceled out in that respect. But I think last night, again, just really nice offensive night. You got 6 different guys with multi-hit games. Talmadge LeCroy had 3 hits. But I think there's a specific star in the making, I think. I don't know if it's a little too soon to call Will Craddock a star. I know you tweeted about it, if he's a star, but the kid's really good. Let's put it that way. The ball's coming off his bat last night. His first hit in his first at bat was 110 miles an hour, a rocket to third base. And I don't know, man. I have not seen guys at that age hit the ball as hard as he did.
We are in the overreaction business, Jack. We see something and we stretch it as far as we possibly can. It's what we do, and I'm here to anoint Will Craddock as the greatest South Carolina baseball player of all time. We're going to build a statue outside of Founders Park based on last night's performance alone. Goes to the plate 5 times, reaches base all 5 appearances that he has, and man, and they mentioned it in the broadcast, I think the first ball came off his bat at 110 and the second one at like 108. He just has a level of pop that you can't teach. You either have that or you don't. And like when he puts a charge in the ball, he puts a charge into it. And that was fun to see last night.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard South Carolina's staff rave about him for months now. I remember asking Monty Lee back in December about Will Craddock, because I actually just posted the story this morning that I've been working on to, get more intel on Will Craddock and what he's going to bring to the table. But this staff has always raved about him. And Monty specifically kind of saw that there's some characteristics similar to a guy like Ethan Petrie. You see it in the size, obviously 6'3", 225, but the bat-to-ball skills, it definitely reminded me of Petrie last night watching those at-bats. And look, it's one game. There's going to be games that are rough, right? He can't hit like this every game. That's just not how baseball works. You fail more times than you succeed. But this kid's got a chance to be really, really good. And we knew that going back to the preseason when he homered off of Ant Phillips. He's had some really good swings. Now it's just about, and even Paul Mainieri mentioned it last night, now they got to find a position for him. And he's going to have to be in the lineup this weekend. There's just no way you're leaving that guy out of the lineup. Like, whether it's, he played first base last night, so Beau Hollins hasn't been hitting. So, and, you know, I feel like it's almost, I feel like Beau kind of just rushed back from injury. It's amazing because the day before he made his scrimmage debut, Paul had just been talking about how Beau couldn't even lift a bat.
Yeah.
He couldn't. He was just starting to lift his arm, and he hadn't swung a bat yet. And then magically he goes out there and has 5 at-bats the next day. So I don't know what's going on there. Heck, somebody pitched with a broken foot last night, which was absolutely, like, insane. Like, on top of everything Paul's had to say, that was just maybe the icing that took the cake. But I think you got to find a place for Craddock in this lineup. And if that means, look, you can play all over the infield. If that means sitting somebody else down, so be it.
Let's hear what Paul Mainieri did have to say about Will Craddock's debut last night after the game.
I just love me some Will Craddock, to be honest with you. He's been such a fun kid to be around and to coach. And from the day he arrived on campus in the fall, in the summer even, you know, when he was here in the summer, he's just a great kid. He's always smiling. He's just so pleasant to be around. And you know, he don't let that smile and that pretty face fool you, though. He's a tiger. I mean, he's a competitor, and he wants to get in there. And he's more than held his own in scrimmage games in the fall as well as in the preseason here. I think the thing I'm most proud about him tonight was how he hung in there with 2 strikes all the time. He drew a walk there at the end. I think he hit that triple, if I'm not mistaken, with 2 strikes on him. So he's starting to recognize pitches a little bit better, you know, the off-speed pitches. But listen, he impacts the ball. He impacts the game. You know, he's going to be I've been telling you this from day one. He's going to be a special player here, and the more he plays, the better he's going to get. He's not going to be perfect. He's not going to reach base 5 times every game. But trust me, he's going to have some days where, you know, the game looks a little, you know, Greek to him. You know, but. He's going to continue to get better. There's no question in my mind about it. He's got all the qualities. I've been around a lot of great players in my coaching career, and I think Will's got a chance to be a really, really outstanding one. Just got to figure out where to play him. We got to make sure we got to find a way to get him into the lineup because he makes an impact on the ball game.
Well, and you and Mainieri are both right there that, hey, maybe you go, you know, let him fill in for Beau Hollins for a period of time where he gets back fully healthy. But yeah, you got to find a way to get this guy in the lineup some kind of way, whether it be in the field or a DH spot or something along those lines, while, you know, he's got this confidence, right? And I feel like a game like last night to debut him as the perfect type of opponent, one that, you know, you have the opportunity to have some success against. And, you know, do we foresee him reaching base 5 times and having a triple in his debut? Not necessarily, but he came out of the gates hot. You'd like to see him, you know, play like that, and we'll see how they work him in this weekend. But I imagine it's going to be a lot of eyes and focus on him when he comes up to the plate a lot going forward now, given what his debut was last night.
Yeah. I mean, Gamecock fans should be excited about this. I know there hasn't been much to be excited about with baseball over the last year and a half, but this kid, I'm telling you guys, like, I don't think this is going to be the last game we see him do something like this. He's going to be a star. You don't just find guys at that size that can hit the ball that hard, that just are quick on the bases too. That's the other thing about Will Craddock. I think that gets lost in all this. As much as he's a power threat at the plate and can hit the ball really hard, he's quick. He stole 10 bases last year at TL Hanna, and you saw the way he was running around second to head to third base last night for that triple. He's got some speed to him for a big guy, so, and he's versatile. So he's definitely a heck of a ball player that South Carolina's found here.
And look, he's going to cool off at some point. He can go out there this weekend and get 6 at-bats and go 0 for over the course of the entire weekend. That's just how baseball works. But while we're riding this high, we're going to overreact in the meantime.
Yes, it's a long season. He will have a lot of at-bats. He's going to get his chances moving forward, so no worries about that.
But an exciting debut nonetheless, and just a good night overall for the offense, finally looking like the way we wanted them to look to start this season. We'll get into what Mainieri had to say about that. Also look at the stats that matter as well on the other side. It is the extra point. It's Howard Head and Jack Feltry on your Thursday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri with you here on your Thursday on the game. No Gamecock baseball tonight. They will take a day off before they get set for the service academies coming in here this weekend. First game tomorrow afternoon as they take on Army. First pitch at 2 o'clock. Pregame coverage can be heard here on 107.5 Game starting at 1:45. We'll preview those teams a little bit more coming up tomorrow, but we're still reacting to last night's run rule victory, 12-2 over Gardner Webb over at Founders Park. And without a doubt, it being the first run rule victory of the season, it was the best the offense has looked through 5 games. And here's what Mainieri said about the offense afterwards.
I've said this before, when things don't go good, there's advantages to being old like me. You've seen it all. And I don't panic because I've had a lot of teams through the years that didn't hit great the opening weekend of the season, and at every stop that I've been. So, I thought the way that we played the first day with the doubleheader and swept it and had the big clutch hits at the end of the game by Bach and then the walk-off home run. I thought we'd go out the next day and just be loosey-goosey and let it rip, and it just didn't happen for us. We just had a really poor day at the plate, and I was so disappointed because it was such a great crowd here and it was a beautiful day, and I just thought we were going to go out and hit like we did tonight, but it didn't happen. But I know this game is a hard game to play, and so I've believed from the get-go that we have a good team. I thought our pitching was going to be really good, and then, of course, we lose McCoy, and we have a couple other guys that are on the shelf. Hudson Lee went out there today. I hate to say this, but he pitched with a broken foot. He just doesn't want to stop playing, and he's seen the doctors, and he just wants to pitch through it, and he was awesome tonight, and he didn't have any pain, but it just shows the character of the kids that we have. They want to play, they want to go out there and compete. I knew our pitching was going to be good, and I felt strongly that we had some really good position players. I think my biggest problem is going to be finding playing time for them all. It's a problem that you want to have as a coach.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. That, again, going back to a guy like Will Craddock, like, hey, how can we find a way to get this guy in the lineup, because we have a lot of good options. And again, you did what you were supposed to do against a team like Gardner Webb last night, where you put up 17 hits and scored 12 runs. And again, it gives you the best offensive performance you've had through 5 games, so far. And again, is this going to equate to you scoring 10 to 12 runs against SEC opponents? Probably not, but it's showing that you're making progress, right? And going back to what Mainieri said yesterday in reference to whatever they did in practice on Monday that, forced hitters into situations to make them better with runners in scoring position, it's clearly working, right? And yeah, there's a lot of kinks that get worked out in that opening weekend, and hopefully as these weeks go by, we find out, well, that Northern Kentucky series was just kind of knocking the rust off, and it wasn't an indication of what's to come, because in the past 2 days, they've done what they needed to do with the plate.
The real telltale, it's coming up a week from Friday, is going to be that Clemson series, and these games are great right now. They're fine. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, this has definitely looked a lot better offensively, and maybe it will get South Carolina going the rest of the way, right? I mean, you hope that's the case, but that Clemson series is really going to be telling for a lot of people, including myself, like, okay, you've done it against these teams. Now can you do it against a real quality opponent in Clemson? And I think you got a chance to, right? I think if South Carolina handles his business these next 4 games, you got 3 coming up this weekend and then a midweek next week, I believe against Queens on Wednesday. Then you play Clemson at home next Friday. It's got a chance to really be an electric series, especially the way you're hitting.
And that's the benefit of having an annual series against an in-state opponent that is also a pretty good historically pretty good baseball program that's always going to have teams in contention for the NCAA tournament, the ACC, and all that kind of stuff, because it does give you that litmus test before you get to the SEC that other teams around the conference may not necessarily have. Yeah, the entire tone of this season will be set coming up next week. And you can go out there and you can sweep the service academies this weekend. That's all fine and good. Beat Queens in the midweek next week. But if you drop the Clemson series again like you did last year, then everything turns to negativity, especially if you get comments like Maneri made last year of, well, this doesn't really matter. We're more worried about the 30 games in the SEC. Hopefully he learned his lesson from those quotes a year ago and doesn't say something. Hopefully he's not put in a position where he has to say something like that. But again, the entire tone of the season is set by what happens next weekend.
I really hope he doesn't double down. I really hope he doesn't double down. And then just him hearing him say yesterday that Hudson Lee was pitching with a broken foot. I mean, is that even like possible? Like, we just saw Lindsey Vonn, obviously, in the Olympics, go out there and perform with a torn ACL. We've seen guys, I'm sure, pitch through pain before, but I mean, my gosh, with a broken foot, that's one of your plant feet. Like, how do you even? I don't even.
So, do you know when he would have broken it? Did you have any insight on this?
It's funny. He, on opening day, he had worn a boot on his foot.
Okay.
A walking boot. So I'm like, oh, he broke his foot or something, right? So we kind of knew about that a few days earlier. But then he's like going out there, no boot on his foot, and then he's pitching. I'm like, wait, what? Didn't this guy just have a boot on his foot?
Yeah.
And then Paul's saying that he broke his foot. I'm like, wait, what? And he felt no pain out there? Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, you can break a bone in your foot, and it's just one bone. If it's one of the smaller ones, maybe that's not as big of a deal. I've never broken a bone in my foot, so I can't speak to that from experience. But, like, there's a difference between breaking one bone and shattering your foot type thing, so I'm not sure where that falls. And if it has been a little bit of time, perhaps it's healed well enough to where you're not feeling as much pain. I don't know. That is kind of wild to hear. So props to Hudson Lee for going out there and gutting through whatever amount of pain he might have been in, and hopefully that's not something that lingers too long. But yeah, I mean, the kid wanted to pitch, so he pitched.
So as we look at the stats from last night,
yep,
the big ones that obviously stick out, I think, are the situational hitting. Carolina was 8 for 21 last night with runners on base. That's a 381 average. And they were 9 for 17 with 2 outs, 529, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, they did go 4 for 14 with runners in scoring position, which is good, not great, somewhere in the 200s.
Left the bases loaded at least once last night.
But overall, the last 2 games, I think the bigger stat from that is 9 for 25 with runners in scoring position, which is about a 360 mark, which is... Look, again, it's against the teams that you're supposed to do this against, but South Carolina has really hit the ball a lot better. And I think the biggest thing, Tyler, is that they're getting production 1 through 9.
Yeah, no, you're trending in the right direction with that for sure. And you're right, especially the top lineup last night. That's where the bulk of your RBIs came from, which was good to see. So there's 2 of your stats last night. 9 total strikeouts for the guys at the plate, which is a little bit more than what you had against Wofford the other night. As far as pitching and fielding goes, 9 strikeouts from your staff, 4 free passes, no extra base hits allowed. Only gave up 1 in the game against Wofford the other night, which was that home run that opened up the game, and only 1 error by the team committed in the field. So still doing really strong for pitching and fielding, which is really good. And obviously, it's good to see that the offense is starting to come along a little bit, building. Right? It's not perfect. Still can improve a little bit in those areas like runners in scoring position, but it's better than what it was over the weekend against Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I think as much as we're talking about the hitting and what they've done, they deserve the credit right now. But even I think Patrick Evans put it best last night, talking to the media. Like they're like the pitching is really what's been carrying them so far early on this season, and it's true. The pitching staff's been great. They deserve a lot of praise. Terry Rooney deserves some credit right now for the way the staff's performing. You mentioned it. No extra base hits allowed last night. It's kind of been a trend early on the season is that they really haven't given up the long ball. They haven't given up a ton of extra base hits. It's 5 games into the year, but they're off to a good start, and you hope that continues going forward. Because if your pitching can perform like that, I feel a lot better about this team's chances moving forward, because I think the offense is going to be good or decent enough to get you through conference play.
Well, last year you had historically the worst ERA in program history. So when you're giving up a lot of runs and your offense is struggling to score runs, that's not exactly a recipe for success. So you've at least got seemingly the pitching in a good place. Offense is coming along. Again, does that mean you're going to go out there and win 15 out of 30 conference games? I don't know yet, but it's setting you up to where I'm feeling good about it at this point in time. We'll have to see what happens when those tougher games get here. But right now we can feel better than maybe even we did 2 days ago.
Yes. The pitching, that's going to be the difference this year, I think, for South Carolina if they're able to continue to perform like this.
Hopefully that continues this weekend as they take on the service academies. I did hear Maneri say after the game, because of some usage issues, we're not going to have as much
no Wings of Blue this weekend.
Pageantry for this weekend as we had hoped.
No parachute team this weekend with everything going on in the world, so that stinks. But they do have a lot of other plans for this weekend, so it'll be a good time out there.
We'll talk about those teams coming up tomorrow. We're also going to talk to Stuart Lake coming up at 10 o'clock as we get his thoughts on 5 games of Gamecock baseball so far. We'll transition over to football coming up next. Coach Beamer has outlined 3 specific areas of change this offseason with his team. We'll discuss that on the other side. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry here on The Game.
If you're a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA Heating and Air for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack from 107.5 The Game sent you on over. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score there. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you'll be good to go. Take control of your comfort today by giving a call to AAA Heating and Air at 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA Heating and Air is 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher with you here on your Thursday on the game. Only 198 days until South Carolina kicks things off against Kent State. It'll be here before we know it, Jack. But there's a lot of conversations to be had in the offseason between now and then. And, well, when you're coming off of a 4-8 season, a lot of things that obviously need to change, too. If South Carolina wants to get themselves back in the playoff conversation, as Beamer touted that they would be back in November, and if they want to get Beamer off the hot seat as well, because I don't think there's any doubt if you make a list of coaches in college football in like the top 5 of hot seats, Beamer's probably somewhere around that list, right? Given how much of a step back last year was.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. There's definitely some pressure on Shane to really have a good season here coming up in 2026, and I think the expectation needs to be, at the very minimum, this team needs to show that they're going to be competitive, right? And I think that was something that they were to a degree last year, but they couldn't finish out games, and that's ultimately what really cost them in a 4-8 season.
And this has been an offseason of change so far. Obviously, a lot of changes to the coaching staff, a lot of changes to the roster itself. Wes and Chris had sat down with Beamer the other day, and they've been releasing some stories daily about those conversations with Coach Beamer. And yesterday, Chris put out the story about a couple of 3 specific areas of change that Beamer's focused on for this offseason and things that he felt like really needed to be tweaked to ensure that 2026 is better than 2025. And you can go to Gamecock Central and read his specific quotes, but we'll go over the topics at hand and what generally he had to say about areas that he's focusing on, and one of those being, number 1 here, roster age and production. You go back to the team 2 years ago that won 9 games, was on the playoff bubble. That was a very experienced team. That was a team that had played a lot of football. The guys that you brought in the transfer portal were extremely experienced, looking specifically at guys like Kyle Kennard as well as Demetrius Knight, and they obviously played huge roles on the team. And, again, it's too early to tell. We won't know until the season gets here, because there are going to be guys that came in from the portal this offseason that aren't going to play much, are going to be backup guys, depth pieces, whatever you want to call it. But I look at the majority of their portal hauls, and a lot of these guys are upperclassmen, are seniors. You look at Cam Miller, Poku, Arnett, Jacarius Peak, Herring, Upton Belafont, the kicker. You've brought in a lot of guys, and that's just seniors that I'm talking about here. You've also brought in plenty of guys that are in that junior range as well, not to mention what you have coming back with guys like Sellers, guys like Stewart, guys like Nick Harbor that have played multiple years of college football now. You feel like this is going to be a more seasoned and experienced team across the board, whatever those starting combinations end up looking like.
It should be, for sure. It should feel a lot like 24 in a lot of respects, because you have a lot of upperclassmen that you have brought in to. It's not that South Carolina didn't have upperclassmen last year, but they were sorely lacking when it came to, number 1, replacing the guys they had lost from the season prior that were so valuable. And it really felt like they had a leadership crisis in terms of not having, it was easy for us 2 years ago to really point out, okay, Demetrius Knight's a leader on this team. Kyle Kennard's a leader. Guys like that. Rocket Sanders. And they were also very productive in their own right. The problem about last year was they brought in those vets, but it didn't feel like it was. Tell me who the leader of last year's team was. I couldn't tell you.
I don't know.
Could not tell you. That's a mystery to me.
It was not obvious.
No, it was not obvious. Like, if you really, you'd have to go back and look at the roster to really indicate, okay, which guy's the leader. 2 years ago, you knew off the bat, Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight. This year, we'll see if that's the case. I would hope that's the case. Yeah, it's kind of odd. We haven't, around this time of year by now, we would have already probably talked to all the transfers, right?
Yeah, somewhere around this time.
Maybe it's in March. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I mean, we typically would have heard from these guys by now, and that would have helped get a better inclination of okay, who are the real leaders of this team? And we really won't know until we get to spring ball next month, and we're starting to see the seedlings being placed for who's going to be those guys that South Carolina sorely needs from a leadership standpoint.
And that was one of the other 3 areas of change that he pointed out, was specifically talking about leadership. And again, that's been the most polarizing topic these past 2 seasons because you had it in droves, it seemed like 2 years ago, and didn't really have it last season. And look, I'm sure there were guys that spoke up in the locker room and stuff like that, but it wasn't as obvious to us. And when you looked at as many games as South Carolina let slip through their fingers, especially in the fourth quarter, that's where leadership can make a difference, because we didn't see anybody specifically getting up there, rallying the troops on the sidelines, and really trying to get everybody locked in and focused. Meanwhile, you go back to the A&M game, you saw Marcel Reed do that exact thing for A&M when they were mounting their comeback in the second half of that game. And that's not saying that Lenore Sellers specifically has to be that, but you have a couple guys on this team in Sellers and Dylan Stewart that are kind of quiet by nature, right? They're more lead by example than fiery up rah-rah type of guy, and that's fine. You have different type of leaders, but you also need to have those guys on a team that aren't afraid to speak up, that aren't afraid to get in people's faces, call them out for what's going wrong, especially in a season that went off the rails like it did last year. It just seemed like you lacked that, and clearly Beamer acknowledging it here is something that hopefully you found, if not with guys on your team that are returning, some of these guys coming in from the transfer portal, like let's just throw out a Jacarius Peak, who again is going to be looked at as one of the best players on this team and hopefully has a strong voice in the locker room too.
Another part of this 3 areas of change that we have here is football 101. Now, what exactly, like in terms of football IQ, right? Is that what this is getting at here?
Yeah, essentially. And again, you can read this specific quote in the article, but making sure that everybody kind of understands what's going on, right? And that seems very dumb because all these guys have played football for many years at this point, most of them multiple years in college. But I think last year showed you specifically that maybe not everybody is as up and as knowledgeable with football IQ as you assume that they are. And I think a perfect example of that is a guy in Boaz Stanley who came in and took over your starting center role, at least early on in the season, after playing multiple seasons at Troy, right? That's an FBS program. You assume the guy knows what's up. You assume you're not going to run into any issues. But my God, he couldn't snap the ball for half the season. Like, I feel like this offseason, as you go through spring practice, you're really going to dumb everything down to the very bare bones. You're going to make sure there's no stone unturned. And there's going to be a lot of guys like, Coach, why are we focusing on these basic things? Because you messed up the basics last year. And in a year as pivotal as this, Coach Beamer and company cannot afford to gloss over areas where they just assume guys are maybe well-versed in, because you saw last year that wasn't necessarily the case. Exactly.
Like, they got to really be detail-oriented and making sure these guys are up to speed. And they even struggled last year with something that I think we forget about here. They struggled with the noise element, the crowd factor, where they couldn't hear. In the SC State game, a home game against the worst, well, I say worst opponent, but it's an FCS opponent. A game against an FCS opponent where you're at home, it wasn't even full, and you couldn't even hear. That's a big red flag to me, and that's something that definitely needs to be corrected here heading into the season, along with the whole understanding of the playbook and the signals and everything.
Yeah, again, it's probably going to be mind-numbing for some of these guys of how minute of detail they're going to have to go into. But when you have a season like last year, again, you got to make sure that you're hitting and crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. So, yeah, making sure offensive line, hey, are we communicating correctly? Are we going to run into environments and atmospheres where we can't hear? Do we have hand signals? What is it that's going to make us communicate better? Can the center snap the ball? If it's Cam Miller, I don't know, whoever ends up playing center, are you going to be able to not get 12 illegal snap penalties this year to start putting us behind the 8 ball before we even get a drive going? Like, those kind of things are going to be a main area of focus, and it's good to hear that Beamer is acknowledging that here in this piece.
But I think those 3 areas, as we kind of round it out here, I think it feels like they're addressing everything they're supposed to, right? The coaching staff is another thing I think they really revamped a little bit, and it looks much improved heading into this year. But now it's going to be going about, it's about going out here and seeing these results come to fruition. It's one thing to acknowledge that things needed to change and improve. It's another for the results to be proven on the field, which time will tell on that one.
So those are areas that Beamer addressed that needed to definitely be changed. What areas need to stay the same? What is this program and this team doing well, even coming off the heels of a bad season? We'll discuss that next to wrap up the hour. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry on your Thursday on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point. It's our head, Jack Feltry, wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Thursday on the game. Again, Stuart Lake, one half of the Gamecock baseball radio team, going to be joining us at the top 10 o'clock hour to give his thoughts on what he's seen through 5 games and look ahead to the weekend against the Service Academy, starting with the Army tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Again, pregame coverage starting at 1:45 right here on 107.5 The Game. But we're going through Coach Beamer's sit down with Wes and Chris of Gamecock Central and outlining areas of change that were needed in this offseason. Again, you can read his full quotes on GamecockCentral.com. Well, they wanted to address roster age production. Seems like they've done that. Football 101, which is, hey, do these guys know football as well as we assume they know football? Because that seemed to be something they got glossed over a little bit a season ago, given the mistakes and issues that they had. And then leadership, which, of course, has been a polarizing topic every single year, but particularly the last couple of years when it comes to Coach Beamer, Coach team. So those are areas that Beamer addressed definitely needed to change, and I think we can all agree with that, if not a few more that you can throw in there as well. But, Jack, to you, what is an element of this team that is done really well? What is an element of this team and Beamer and this staff or whatever it may be that you feel like needs to stay exactly how it is?
It's a good question. As I'm thinking here, I think just it's going to sound so cliche when I say this, the culture, I think, needs to continue to stay the way it has. And I think there's some criticism out there for the family dynamic and the find some joy, loving dynamic. Like, sometimes people think that does not work. I think for the best results with this program, I think that is what needs to continue to happen. Because if you don't have a good foundation, if you don't have good chemistry, it's not going to work. And I just saw on Twitter earlier this hour that the team was out at the basketball facility last night having their annual 3-on-3 tournament. So it's stuff like that they do the wiffle ball games and whatnot, and the other events to build camaraderie. Because if you don't have that chemistry and that camaraderie, all the other things don't matter. And that needs to be at the core of what you're good at heading into this year.
Great minds think alike. That's exactly what I was thinking. Was culture is something that we've continued to give Beamer a lot of credit for in the good seasons and in the bad ones as well, like last year was, because you haven't had a team quit on him, right? Again, you were 4-8 last year, and the only thing you were playing for in the Clemson game was the ability to beat your rival because you knew the bowl game was out of the question a couple years ago. Obviously, you had a 0 for October, and yeah, you were still playing for a bowl game, but we've seen plenty of other teams check out when the chips are kind of down and against them at that point in time, and that hasn't happened. You've had these guys playing hard. What, outside of Juice Wells, I guess you really haven't had anybody just kind of up and quit on you midseason, and that was its own circumstance there. You've had guys that have decided to try and self-shirt, and Beamer's like, no, we're not doing that. You can go ahead and leave. We'll leave your spot open here and let somebody else fill it this next upcoming off season. So you haven't had cultural problems with this team, and I go back to a conversation from last week with Devontae Miles, right? Here's a guy that gets arrested with a lot of alleged drugs in the car and a weapon and all that kind of stuff, and that's really bad. And again, you got to let the legal process play out, and we'll see what becomes of all that, obviously. But Beamer did not waste any time by removing him from the program, which is exactly what we thought he was going to do, and that sets kind of a zero-tolerance policy for other guys on the team. Like, hey, if you screw up like this, we're not going to hesitate to give you the boot as well. And I think that sets kind of a foundation of, hey, we got to kind of stay on the straight and narrow here, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And again, especially considering other programs on the SEC and the problems they've had, there have been very few of those incidents with Coach Beamer. And in the now 6 years that he's been here as the head coach, which is pretty remarkable considering how many hundreds of guys have come through the program over the course of those years. You've been able to keep all of them for the most part in line, with the exception of those few situations like Devontae Miles last week. But again, like him, and when you had those new commitments that came in the spring of 2023 that ran into some legal issues as well, you wasted no time moving on from them, not letting them be a distraction in the locker room, and not letting other guys on your team see people be treated differently. Right? Saying, hey, wait a minute, that guy got in trouble for this and he's still on the team. Why is that? Like, no, he's gone. he's gone, he's taken care of, he's not on the team anymore, and if you mess up like he did, you're going to be gone too. And I think, again, Beamer's done a really good job amidst the ups and downs of the play on the field of making sure the culture here is really good. And that is that going to keep him in this job if they struggle again this year? No, but it is something that we do need to tip our caps to, saying he's been consistent with in his 6 years.
Things would be much different right now if his policies were different about moving on from guys when they are in the wrong and they do stuff like what a Devontae Miles did, for example, or I think it was a few years ago. Maybe there were a group of freshmen, maybe I think that got suspended and cut from the team. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly what for.
It involved a weapon on campus. I remember that.
That's
but
right.
They'd only been here for a couple weeks, and Beamer got to boot him out of here. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard anything about those guys really since then. But it shows that kind of zero tolerance policy for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like if he allowed those guys to stick around and then he cuts another guy, it's like, what are we doing here? Like that would create tension, I think, in the locker room. And the last thing you need is that, right? You're going to have there'll be tension in its own right, I'm sure, with guys wanting to be starters and whatnot. But that's on the field stuff. The off the field stuff you can't tolerate. And Shane's always done a great job with that throughout his tenure at South Carolina, and it's very commendable. And it's something that is a great quality to have in that, knowing that no player is, in a sense, no player is above the law, essentially, and the rules of the team. And when you break those rules, there are consequences for it. And I think it shows there's a no funny business mentality here.
Well, Coach Beamer is a player's coach, right? And that's a cliche that we throw around a lot these days as well. But we've never had to question whether these guys were going to get up and play for them. No matter how good or bad a season's going, they've always gone out there. The guys on the field showed up and given their best effort, even though the results haven't necessarily been there each and every year. So we don't have any doubts that the same situation is going to be this year where, when we see them on the field, they're going to be giving their best and nobody's going to be going through the motions and, just trying to get to the end because they want to play for Beamer and be successful for him and have to try and keep him around here as long as they possibly can. So, yes, we're in agreement that culture has obviously been a big positive for this team, and we assume it's going to be going forward as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other things, but that's probably the main thing that just sticks out most about the things that need to continue to remain the same. You just need more production. You need to get consistency now. I think that's the other thing that's missing that needs to change moving forward is finding a way to become a 8, 9 win, 10 win team every year, not this seesaw effect. Because we've seen South Carolina some really good years, but we've also seen some down years. So finding that level of consistency is massive.
Getting 198 days until the kickoff against Kent State, so plenty more of these conversations to have over the course of the offseason. Garnet Trust Hour up next. Stuart Lake joins us to kick off the hour here on The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the game. No Gamecock baseball tonight after they pick up the run roll victory over Gardner-Webb last night. They get set to welcome in the Service Academies coming up this weekend. We'll dive into all that and more with Stuart Lake, who's joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Once again, Coach, appreciate the time as always. How are we doing today?
Doing good. Enjoyed listening to y'all, so appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, now that we've seen 5 games, of course, last night looking like the best of those so far, what's your assessment of almost the first entire week of Gamecock baseball in 2026?
Yeah, I think one thing jumps out immediately at me. I feel like our starting pitching has been pretty consistent. And last night, exactly what I wanted to see out of Bradley Hodges come in. Wish he could have went a little bit longer, obviously only 2 2/3, but showed that left-handed starter that could be really valuable. But offensively, last night got me excited. And I feel a lot better sitting here this morning. I saw a little bit of an edge in some of those at-bats. And, you know, it starts at the top with Tyler Bach and Scobie, but I think Will Craddock might be the reason some of that edge came last night. That was a fun night to watch.
Hey, Stuart, it's Jack here. Hope you're doing well. Let's continue with Craddock because, I mean, he was just unbelievable last night. Was smoking the ball off the bat. First hit was 110 miles an hour. Second hit was 108 off the bat. Have you seen anything like that from a guy making their college debut as a freshman? Like, that's got to be up there with some of the more impressive performances, I'm sure.
Well, it was. And, you know, before the game, Grayson was doing the TV, and I told him, I said, hey, this guy looks the role. You know, you get those certain type freshmen, and if you're fortunate enough to get them, a lot of times you lose them to the draft, but you get this kid in. He's looked at all fall and preseason. I know, Jack, you've seen a bunch of it, but I don't remember a guy looking that calm in his first start. You know, I've coached Landon Powell and Drew Meyer and some really stars that went on, and it kind of took them a few at-bats to get that hit, or maybe even a couple games to get that hit and look that comfortable. He looked like a guy that was just ready to roll right out of the gate.
Another guy, I feel like you mentioned him in the open there, Stuart, but Tyler Bach just I don't know how to describe it, but I just like the energy. I like kind of the vibe he brings to this team. And I know when you have a bunch of newcomers kind of all trying to come together and gel together, you maybe need that. But what have you seen from Tyler, like at the top of that lineup, and kind of just some of the intangibles that kind of just jump off the page with him?
Well, he showed me something last night I like. So scouting reports, y'all talk about them a bunch. You start to get the report from, you know, Northern Kentucky and now Wofford. So it had been, scouting report would have been, and I've watched every game, hey, patient at the plate, going to try to work the count. And there he goes, and boy, he just missed the first pitch. And that excites me. That shows a veteran guy that knows what the scouting report probably is starting to formulate against him. And he went the opposite, and I'm telling you, just missed it. He got one later in the game, but he's also made some really big plays in center field that kind of just go unnoticed. That, you know, maybe it's a runner on first and the ball that if he don't play it correctly, a run could score and they just catch it and he has to run back. I've really liked Tyler Bach. He brings a mature kid. I'm in the building a lot, and he just handles himself. He acts like a leadoff hitter, and I love left-handed leadoff hitters. He's really checked a lot of boxes for me.
Again, talking to Stuart Lake here in the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll stick on Bach there for a second because the production at the plate is obviously speaking for itself through 5 games so far, but he just brings a different level of energy. And if you had to pick one player on the team, I would imagine having the leadoff guy being your best energy guy is probably the right choice, right?
Well, absolutely, because that's how that – you're coming in off the field, hopefully when you're home, you know he's hustling in. You see him getting ready. He never has an issue of being ready to go and with the clock and all nowadays. But that's a big leadership quality to KJ Scobie. And some of those guys, they're still learning. You know, Scobie hit 2 last night, and I liked him in that 2 spot. I didn't know how he would respond. Remember, he was 3, didn't do so well. Well, he had the walk-off, so he did well. But on Saturday didn't do well. Dropped him to 6, and at Wofford, he looked like a dude. When I saw him bounce back up to the 2 spot, I was curious how he would do. I think a lot of that had to do with Tyler Bach being a leader for him, showing he'd still be aggressive. I'm going to get on base, distract the pitcher when I'm on. I think that could be a good combination for Coach at the top of the order.
Let's take a look at this pitching staff. I know it's 5 games, Stuart, but I'm really impressed with the way these guys have pitched from top to bottom. Heck, guy like Hudson Lee pitching last night with a broken foot, and he's going out there and striking out 2 guys. So I think that really just speaks to if he's pitching well and the rest of these guys are pitching well, they're doing pretty well top to bottom. Your initial impressions on this group?
I agree with you. I think the starters, I've really enjoyed y'all as they're throwing strikes. That's been a big thing for me, and I don't ever want to give someone too much credit or put too much blame, but I've said it publicly. I think Talmadge LeCroy's got to catch 40 to 45 games, and I love seeing him back in their 2 midweek games. He'll be in there this weekend, and then get him out, offensively like last night, and get him on out. And we know once we get him out, Gavin Braylon's a great job coming in, but pitching staff-wise, I tell you, jumped out at me last night, a guy I really had seen in scrimmages and maybe not paying attention, but I thought Josh Gregoire really was a dude. And when I hear the Hudson Lee story at the end, that's the kind of stuff that excites me, that a guy realizes my window's only open so long. And you know what, I could do this or I could do that, but I ain't missing this. I want to pitch now. And what I saw out of him left-handed, he could be really hard, especially on left-handed hitters, the way that ball was running away from him.
Stuart, let's go back to LeCroy here. Man, you got to respect the guy that has stuck around. He's had his ups, he's had his downs. He's taken, frankly, taken some heat from some of the fan base, and last year didn't really start the way he wanted it to. This year, kind of has the ball go through the hoop, so to speak, is able to get off to a good start. Just looks to me like he's playing confidently behind the plate as well, throwing behind runners and kind of being dynamic in that way. What have you noticed from Talmadge just with the confidence he's playing with right now?
Yeah, I know y'all have heard me say this before, but, I was fortunate enough. I played with Talmadge's dad, Jody, so I know what that family is and that makeup is. Talmadge is my last guy I'm connected to. On the team. He was there. We recruited him when I was coaching. So obviously, beside the fact of the family, that's a soft spot for me. But I just think he looks athletic this year. I kept saying that to Derek last night, just watching him. Last year at times it was slow to get the shin guards off or slow to get them on to get back out. I just see a whole different air to him. And every time I see him, I'm actually giving him a fist bump going, dude, keep that energy. Again, I mentioned Grayson Griner, but Landon Powell, Timmy Whitaker, guys from the past, you've got to catch. You're a catcher. You don't get days off. You got to keep telling Coach put me in there, and that excited me, and I think he's been a big part. And obviously right now in the middle of the order, and last night, 3 hits. He was really a big part. Probably hit maybe, and Jack, you were up there, I think he might have hit the hardest ball of the night in Spartanburg.
Mm-hmm.
And that got
I agree.
Up to
Again, talking with Stuart Lake here on the AAA Heating and Air phone line. Sticking with the offense here, the end of last night's game was a 2-run homer by Logan Sutter to end up giving South Carolina the run rule. And one of the topics we've been talking about to start off the season was his struggles, not only in these games so far, but going back to the fall, going back to preseason. Maneri talked about it last night. He didn't have I think he only had 1 extra base hit throughout that entire, preseason process. Goes out there, hits a home run to wrap up the game last night. It's only 1 at bat, but what can something like that do for a guy that we know obviously has a prowess at the plate, given what he'd done at Purdue prior to coming to South Carolina? Can that be the spark that he needs to get himself back on track?
I think so. Y'all know where we all sit, so you get a great view of the dugout. Here's where Logan Sutter impressed me. He's not feeling sorry for himself. I can watch the dugout. I can watch when guys isolate themselves. I can watch when guys kind of never go out when they're celebrating. And I watch Logan, and I've gotten to know him throughout the year, and he's right in the celebration. I saw him high-fiving, fist-bumping. This game rewards you. The game rewards you when you are excited for teammates. And when he got that at-bat, you can kind of call it a mop-up at-bat. I was up there because I was wanting to – I love getting out of there early. I love 10-inning games. I told Derek last night I'm going to start donating to charities for hitters to get us out of there early. I love that stuff. So, but Logan Sutter went to the plate with a calmness that he didn't have this weekend. He kind of went to the plate this weekend looking to prove something every at-bat, and that is so hard. And last night he kind of went to the plate, and I think he would tell you this, he just looked like a kid getting an at-bat and enjoying it. And all of a sudden, there's that power that he should have done already, and he will. I think that was a huge at-bat, y'all, that'll lead to success for Logan Sutter.
Let's shift gears to this weekend. I think this is really a big weekend series for South Carolina because you got the 3 service academies coming in. They may not be the same talent level as South Carolina or any competition they're going to face later this year, but from a pure competitive standpoint, I'm sure it's going to be as tough as anything. And I think this would be a really big weekend for South Carolina to sweep through and go 5-0. But let me get your thoughts on what you think this weekend really means for this team.
Well, I agree with what you just said. And here's what you do when you set up these tournament-type things. Coach Mainieri knows it because he's done it his whole career. We're going to get their number one. They're coming after us. So we get number one on Friday. Then you get, Army's number one, or Navy, on Saturday. Then we get Air Force on Sunday. So it's not going to be a case where we're catching their third pitcher in a weekend like you could in sometimes a 3-game series. So you're going to see their best. I use the word a lot, makeup and toughness. Well, there's nobody going to be showing makeup and toughness more than these three schools. These kids are playing because they love baseball. This isn't a case of I'm going to get NIL money and go into the big leagues. No, you're going on to serve our country and protect all of us. So you're talking about makeup and tough guys. I've played the Air Force a lot throughout my career because they would always travel over and play us. They get after it, and they're going to have athletic guys. I told somebody the other day, I said, hey, don't forget, Paul Skeens pitched 2 years there. And if this coach wasn't the character he is, Paul Skeens would have pitched his junior year there, not been able to go to the big leagues as he already has because he'd have had to serve. So they have those type guys. Army showed it last weekend against Clemson. I think it's going to be a super competitive weekend. I hope the weather allows us to stay on the schedule because it's so fun. It has a regional type feel when your game ends and 2 more teams are playing and vice versa. So I hope the weather allows us to do that this weekend.
Yeah, Stuart, Salute the Troops weekend. I feel like a really cool, maybe it hasn't been talked about enough, how cool of an idea this is, having Army, Navy, and Air Force all coming in on the same weekend, being able to play each of them, letting them get in some other games as well, like you mentioned. Can you just kind of talk to the uniqueness and kind of how cool of an event this could be?
Well, I've never been a part of one, and when Coach Mainieri started asking me in the fall because we wanted to get some donors involved, and there were some things we were trying to do, and as he told y'all last night, unfortunately, Air Force-wise, we don't have a flyover. We're not going to have a parachute and some things that he had aligned and some donors that really stepped up to help us do. So I hate that, but everything else, I just think it's cool. I think it teaches your players how, like Sunday, we play the second game, so you're not going to get to do BP on the field. That's really going to have a regional feel if everything stays on schedule. 11 o'clock game before you, maybe it goes extra innings, maybe you got to sit around a little bit. I just think you can learn some valuable lessons, and you really are going to compete against 3 teams. They're not coming here to just play you. They're coming here to try to win, and that's what's going to be good about this. And I hope our crowd comes out and enjoys it because we got a lot of cool things planned in-game that'll be fun, too, for these games.
Looking forward to it, Stuart. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll probably talk to you sometime next week as well.
Awesome. Enjoy it, guys. Talk to you soon.
Stuart Lake there, part of the Gamecock Baseball radio broadcast team. Again, game number 1 of this weekend. Salute to the Troops. Going to be against Army tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Pre-game coverage starting at 1:45 right here on 107.5 The Game. We'll obviously break down those teams a little bit more coming up tomorrow morning as we get you set for that. We'll dive back into college football coming up next. The Big Ten's radical idea for an expanded playoff has leaked out, and I won't lie to you, there's some elements of this I don't actually hate. And we'll tell you about that next. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Veltry, and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Again, appreciate Stuart Lay joining us there. Talk some Gamecock baseball as they get back in action, taking on Army tomorrow afternoon over at Founders Park. Want to dive back into football here. I was going to mention this earlier on in the week. We haven't got a chance to get to it. Have you guys dove in to the Big Ten's internal document about their idea for a 24-team college football playoff that's now leaked and all the specifics of what that would look like?
I haven't yet, but obviously the word has been out there about the Big Ten wanting a 24-team playoff for a little bit now.
I haven't dove in out of the principle of the thing, Tyler.
So I'm not in support of a 24-team playoff by any means. I think 12 is fine. I've accepted the fact that we're probably going to go to 16, and I feel like that's a good enough limit. But the Big Ten's been pushing for this. Of course, they gave the caveat to the SEC, like, hey, we'll agree to 16 in the short term if you guys are willing to go to 24 in like 29 or 30 or whatever it may be. The SEC is not quite budged on that yet, but the Big Ten's going to continue to push for this. So, again, a lot of people on principle of a 24-team playoff just kind of scoff at that and don't want to learn too much about it. But as I dive deeper into what exactly the Big Ten's plan was, there's a lot of ideas in here that are good. It's just the number of teams are too much, right? So here's how it would work according to the Big Ten in this internal document that got out the other day. Instead of auto bids, which is something that we thought the Big Ten was really pushing for, they're going for a 23-1 model, which would include 23 at-large teams, so basically 1 through 23 in the college football playoff rankings, and if not already included in that top 23, one spot for the G5. So no conference tie-ins, no this many teams from the Big Ten, this many teams from the SEC. Just be straight up 23, and then if a G5 team's not already in, you give them a spot. I'm good with that. Top 8 teams get buys, but in this process, rounds 1 and 2 would be on campus. So the top 8 seeds would get buys, but they would still get an opportunity to host in the second round. So you have your first round games happening with the teams that are having to play in the first round, then those teams advance to play the on-campus sites of the top 8 seeds. So everybody gets, as far as the higher seeds go, opportunities to host at least at some point, and then you would obviously move on to the bowls for the quarterfinals and semis, as we've been doing with the 16-team playoff. They would get rid of conference championship games as they kind of view them as artificial, which I think most of us may agree on that. And then they would also put in a caveat of no regular season rematches allowed in the first round. So games we've already seen wouldn't be possible until the second or later rounds of the college football playoff. Again, I'm on board with all of this with the exception of the 24 teams being included. You give me this in a 16-team playoff, I say sign me up.
So this thing would start the second week in December. I think that's a flaw because if there's no conference championship games, why aren't you starting this as soon as like the week after the regular season ends when conference championship games would be? And also, isn't the second weekend of December always reserved for Army Navy? It's always typically around
at
that.
this time, yes. Now that's something. Could you move that to standalone on its own on the weekend that used to be conference championships? Absolutely. I think the reason for not having a quick turnaround and playing the first week of December is logistics, because theoretically you wrap up the regular season on that Saturday after Thanksgiving. You have your selection show on Sunday that outlines the bracket and the teams in and all that kind of stuff. That's a pretty quick turnaround to have everybody playing 6 days later. So giving everybody that extra week probably allows all that stuff to play out a little bit more. So that makes sense. And yeah, I don't know what the contracts look like with Army Navy, but if you give them a standalone weekend on what used to be conference championship Saturday and then the playoff takes over after that, I'd be cool with that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point on logistics, man, because typically you're actually already diving into your opponent as a coaching staff on Sunday
right
after a game, and you technically wouldn't even know who you were going to be playing yet until you had the show. Then you actually have to gather whatever parts of the film that you as a unit, sort of how you like to structure things. You have to put all that together. You have to actually have reservations for travel, for hotels, for some of that can be maybe pre-handled or whatever. But even the fact that your equipment staff, if you're having to go across the country, like they aren't on a plane. They're driving for 3 days.
James Madison just had to do that this year, going to Oregon.
So
Yeah, they would have to leave like Sunday night to get there Wednesday or something.
your equipment, they drive everywhere. So plus I think you do want to give that 1 week of just let's try to get the bumps and bruises healthy. Like it's not going to guarantee you're going to be completely healthy. It's football. You're going to have injuries that last longer than that, obviously. But that 1 week buffer, your bumps and bruises, guys, that you're kind of quote, oh, he's banged up, will be a little bit closer to being 100% going into that game after a long season. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with that part. How long does this thing go? Like, once it gets kicked off, are we like, all right, we're playing, boys, or are we doing we're going to play and then we're going to wait a week, then we're going to play, we're going to wait 3 weeks? Like,
that's where you get into problems.
That's the biggest problem. When you start the thing, you should just play it out.
So that is one flaw of this, is it would still kind of follow a similar structure to what we do now, where you would have first round on what is now Army-Navy weekend. Second round would still be that weekend before Christmas. You would then move to the quarterfinals with the bowl games around New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Semifinals would still be January 9th, 10th, like we've been doing. You would still have a national championship later in January. So that part hasn't changed again. And here's my thing. And I love bowls. I've always loved bowls. I think we've moved past the need for them because we're trying to fit them into this structure of a playoff that they don't really need to be a part of. I get it. There's money and all that stuff with the host cities and all that is hard to just, throw away, right? Which I understand is why they're still included, but it makes things so clunky because, yeah, you could theoretically speed things along a lot faster. We could be playing the national championship on Saturday, January 8th or something along those lines, and I think people would be more on board with something like that, but I don't think bowl games are going away, so this is probably, unless you're talking about moving everything up another week and having 3 rounds before Christmas, probably the best you're going to get.
Why not just move the start of the season up about a week? Like, move week 1 to where week 0 typically is, that second to last week in August. It may be a little hot, but so be it. It's hot on August 31st typically anyway, and September for that matter. Move the season up a week, and that way you're kind of getting done by the season should go no longer than the second week in January, typically like what it was when the 14 playoff was going on. You get done around January 11th, 12th, whatever, and I don't think there's any need for this 10-day window between the quarters and the semis and the national championship. That's kind of where I think the playoff loses its luster, because we're still going to watch, but it's like there's no need for longer than a week break, because logistically you know where you're going for the next game if you advance.
I don't think college football is willing to give up the season ending on Thanksgiving weekend, because, again, holiday weekend, we get games wall-to-wall Black Friday, obviously tons of games on Saturday. I think that's something from a TV viewership standpoint that pops a lot of numbers, and I don't think the television broadcast partners are going to be willing to say, yeah, let's just end the season a week before. I know they used to do that years and years ago, but I think we're kind of cemented in the season ending Thanksgiving weekend. Now, yeah, you can move the season up, but if you do that, I think you're just adding in another bye week, so we get the same amount of football just played out over an extra week every year instead.
Yeah, and I do think there's going to ultimately be a push to slide the thing up, just because it does go so late, and
the NFL is going to be coming for Labor Day soon,
and you start butting heads with the NFL. I think a big aspect of this, man, is to get in a room with the NFL and let's sit down and have a conversation about how, some type of unofficial partnership, honestly, that can benefit both sides. And, college football is growing in terms of TV viewership, is growing in terms of casual fans, and there can be advantages to both sides. I love the idea. Why can't we have build up to, where NFL games lead right into college games, or college games lead right into NFL games? Like, it doesn't have to be the two kind of avoiding each other, or, frankly, college football avoiding the NFL. That we can work together on some of this time of year and cross-promote and work together on making some of these weekends like memorable. College football is made for Saturdays, man. The more you can have college football on Saturdays late in the year, the better, in my opinion, as opposed to having to just avoid the NFL like crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the NFL, the college football is its unfunded minor league system that built stars before they ever get into the NFL. So, yeah, them helping out college football would be better for everybody. Will they do that? We'll obviously have to see because the NFL just kind of does its own thing and everybody else kind of gets out of the way. So we'll see if those changes do get made. But, again, as much as I'm opposed to a 2014 playoff, the structure and idea that the Big Ten has, I think is really good. Maybe that's something we could look at as we do ultimately expand this coming up here in a couple of years. There's a big name that could be returning to the Masters this year. We'll discuss that and what legends would we like to see return to the sport in their current state. That's up next. It's the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on The Game.
final thing with you in regards to your recovery. Is the Masters off the table for you?
No.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. That was a presser the other day ahead of this weekend's Genesis Invitational hosted by Tiger Woods, where he was asked about would he still be interested in playing in the Masters coming up here in a couple months, given the injuries that he's still trying to come back from. And he said, hey, it's still on the table. Jack, is a golf nut yourself, what does that do for your excitement level of the potential of seeing Tiger again coming up here in a couple months?
Man, I'm fired up. I am fired up. I think Twitter and social media exploded after. It's crazy what one word out of Tiger Woods can do, because anytime the guy speaks at this point, it's like must-see television. And for all he said was that no, it's not off the table, to play the Masters, and that's in April. And look, he hasn't played since 2024 at the Open Championship, and he hasn't really played. I mean, he's dealt with so many injuries over the last few years, and he's 50 years old now. He's only getting older, and Father Time is undefeated. But the thing about the Masters is that if you win the Masters, you're always invited back to play. So I think a lot of people would really like to see Tiger. But the big thing is it's more so just about, all right, can he make the cut rather than is he going to win the thing?
So, Wes, what kind of golf fan would you consider yourself? Die hard, casual? Where do you kind of fall in that?
Somewhere below casual.
Okay, so you hear Tiger Woods might play in the Masters this year. Does that pique your interest? Are you more likely to watch more of it? What does that do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of actually ironically goes back to the Lindsey Vonn thing, where maybe I'm not even watching skiing at all, but you give me a good story, and I don't have anything else going on Sunday. I think he's got to contend, at least to an extent, for it to really grab my attention. Like him just playing, all right, yeah, that's cool. It's a passing thought for me. I'm not jumping up and down in my chair like Jack. But, yeah, if he were to somehow not just play but start playing well and create some buzz there, then, yeah, okay, all right, this is a cool sports story.
He is one of those unique sports figures that's always going to move the needle anytime he does anything, whether it's, playing well or just being in the tournament to begin with. And, I think a lot of people, if they knew he was playing in the Masters, would probably tune in more for those earlier rounds just to see if he's going to make the cut. And obviously, if he goes on a crazy run like he did in 2019, a route to winning the thing, those numbers would just absolutely be through the roof. But it's very rare to be an athlete that can do that kind of thing, right? Like, Scottie Scheffler is a phenomenal golfer, and we'll see what his career is going to end up being. He's still really young, got a lot of golf to play, but I don't know if he's ever going to ascend to that point where if he says, yeah, I'm going to come back and play the Masters in 2045 or something like that after being away for a couple years, I don't think it moves the needle in the same way. And there's very few guys across all sports, guys and girls, that is, across all sports that can do those kind of things. But Tiger is definitely one of those guys.
I will say, Tiger is only 3 major wins away from tying Jack Nicklaus for the most all time. Now, I highly doubt he's ever going to get there, but we have heard him talk about before that he would like to win another. But I don't know. It's tough at this age because the thing about the PGA Tour, the current version of it, is that there's no golf cart. You have to walk the entire thing. On the senior tour, you can have a golf cart, and he's thought about that for sure. Listening to that press conference the other day, that was something he's definitely got an interest in, maybe down the road in a few years. But yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see Tiger go back out. I know personally, I would like to really see him go out there and win another, whether it is a Masters again or some tournament. Just seeing him back out there, though, would be really cool because it really has been a while since we've seen him out there, almost 2 years at this point.
And golf is one of those sports that you can play for a very long time. So Tiger Woods could theoretically still continue to play well into his mid to late 50s and still maybe play at a high level. We'll obviously see. As far as other sports go, if you could take any retired athlete, one of the greats or whoever it may be, and plop them back into their current sport to watch them play like today, who would you choose?
Michael Jordan.
You think Jordan could still ball at, what is he, 60?
Like in their,
62,
I'm sorry.
I thought you were
in
putting
their-
them in
their
prime.
current
I
age, their
thought-
current
Okay,
state.
in their
That
current
really
state.
limits,
Okay, well,
yeah.
never mind then. Never mind then. Forget Michael Jordan. Yeah, the guy hadn't shot a free throw apparently in years until recently. So I'm taking him off that list.
If you believe that.
Yeah, I don't know. The guy doesn't seem to like touch a basketball. He does everything else, but it. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, okay, never mind. I'm Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan then.
Michael Jackson,
Michael Jackson.
That'd be
yeah.
a sight to see as well.
yeah. Give me a second to think
All
on
right.
that.
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Like current
we
age.
have we have severely
Yeah.
limited our
Yeah,
reach here.
It's
Like,
a unique question.
but who else? Like
I don't.
most of these guys,
Yeah.
man, when you're done,
You're done.
you are done.
It would have to be somebody that's retired in the past couple years. And I'm not saying you got to go out there and be a superstar, right? Like, I still think Chipper Jones could hit a ball if you placed him in a batter's box at his age. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's
Is he
still.
catching up to 98?
I think he's still capable of going out there and doing something. I'm not saying you got to go out there and see these guys perform like they were in their prime, but if you could pluck any of them out of retirement, who would you like put at the top of your list for that?
I don't even know. I mean,
I think if you plucked Tom Brady, he'd actually go out there.
I agree.
He's so
He's still
cerebral.
capable.
he's still in very good shape.
He would
obviously.
probably. I mean, we saw Phillip Rivers just
Sure.
roll off the couch and reset his NFL insurance clock.
Another 5 years, I
Yeah.
think.
It was amazing.
His eligibility for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean Brady, and I'm not even a Brady fan, but that's the guy I think of where I'm like, all right, who that is firmly retired
Yeah.
could probably go out, and if you're just like, hey man, we need you to start a game, he'd be like,
Yeah.
I got you. And he's still been obviously very tied in.
Sure.
You know, some guys leave their sport and they want to just unplug after doing it every single day for their entire adult life.
Right.
Brady's still in it, part ownership. He's doing the analyst work. It's not like all the defenses would have just changed and he'd be like, wait, what am I looking at? He would be able to dissect.
Yeah.
Dude, I firmly believe he could still go do it. But like a running back, if they've been retired for a couple of years, man, they're not going back out there and running for 150 yards in a game.
And again, I'm not saying you got to go out there and be as great as you once were, but like who's capable of still going out there and being okay? Like I think Megatron could still go out there and put up some decent catches.
Even like
Again, he's not going
now?
to dominate the way that he did.
He's been retired for what,
bro,
like
no.
over a decade?
No.
Well, but he retired young though.
Yeah, that's
How-
true. But he
how
also
old is
had a
he?
lot of injuries.
Yeah, but again, he's
How
not
old
going
is
to go. He's not
Megatron?
going to go out there and
Megatron's
be
probably
prime
40.
Megatron.
Dude,
I still
no.
think he's capable of going out there and playing if you wanted to.
Playing.
And,
He's
you're-
40 on the dot.
You would have to go out there and get yourself back into shape, but I'd pay to see that.
Dude hasn't played in 11 years. I'll tell you.
No shot.
I'll te-
Megatron would get hammered.
I'll tell you.
Like he's not even getting off the line.
I'll tell you one. And if he were still alive, I would 100% believe he could go out there and put up 20, 25 points. Kobe Bryant. I think if he were still alive, he would definitely go out there and school most of these young guys in the NBA.
How old would Kobe be? now?
Kobe would probably be. He died at like 40.
So it'd be late 40s.
40. He was 41 when he died, so he'd be 40. He would have just turned 47, I believe. So I think he could still go out there. He put up 50 in his last game.
Yeah.
Or was it? No, I'm sorry. Was it 60?
It was something like
It-
that.
it was
it was a lot.
Yeah,
he
it was
still
60.
still playing at his best when he retired.
I think,
That was a
Yeah.
sports moment.
Yes.
I'm not a huge NBA watcher,
but
but
that was sick.
that was one of those that like transcended
Yeah.
everything.
Yes. That's like when Tiger won the Masters in 19. Like that's very similar of like the last hurrah for these guys, and when Kobe put up 60 in his final game.
And like all of his teammates
Yeah.
being like, we're just gonna let this man go. If he had if he shoots it 50 times, so be it.
Like the guy was still shooting free throws on a torn Achilles. Like he could go out there and easily put up 15 points coming off the bench.
If you took any shots away from him, he was probably going to rip your head off in the locker room afterwards. So you just like, you know what, let him cook.
and that's
it's
why
fine.
that's why he would cook most of these guys, because of that Mamba mentality.
We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour, talk about what's going on in the Olympics, particularly when it comes to hockey, as the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating rolls along here on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyrad, Jack Belcher, Wes Mitchell along with you, wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. Again, I posed the question in that last segment when we were talking about Tiger Woods. What athlete at their current age would you want to see plopped back into their respective games to see play? Not saying they got to go out there and dominate again, but just to think that maybe they could give you some level of production. Tom Brady, popular answer on the the Firehouse Subs text line. Somebody else here puts in Marshawn Lynch.
I don't know about that, but
Again, he doesn't have to go out there and rush for 1,000 yards or 100
No.
yards in a game, but could he get you 3 yards on the goal line? Absolutely.
he could for sure.
And, obviously, if they would have handed it to him at the goal line, then maybe Seattle has back-to-back Super Bowls and the entire trajectory of that organization changes.
Exactly.
But, good answers there. Appreciate everybody weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line there. A lot of fun things happening over in Italy when it comes to the Olympics. We've been keeping our tabs on it. The sport that I think people care the most about, at least have the most interest in from a familiarity standpoint, is, of course, hockey. And yesterday, as we get down to the nitty-gritty, when it comes to men's hockey, both the U.S. and Canada had to survive in overtime to advance to the semifinals.
Yeah, really nice win for the U.S. yesterday. I got to tell you, I was sweating it out a little bit watching baseball yesterday. I had it on my iPad yesterday, and the U.S. was holding on to a 1-0 lead late into the third period, and then Sweden ties the game after pulling the goalie, and I'm like, oh, man, no way. This is not good. And then you get to overtime, and the way overtime works in hockey, and this is the way it is in the NHL, it's 3-on-3.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sudden death. So whoever scores, it's over. And when Quinn Hughes took that sniper from the top there, I was going nuts. It was a crazy shot, and definitely I feel like that's the modern version of when Mike Eruzione had the goal against the USSR in '80 in the Olympics, and that was a great shot. And now the U.S. moves on to the semifinals with the chance to, go for gold. And it feels like inevitably U.S. and Canada are going to meet each other for a chance to win gold, and that'll be a great matchup, just like it was in the Four Nations last year.
Well, and it wasn't a guarantee for either one of them because again, the U.S. had to survive in overtime against Sweden. Canada, same thing in their game, 3-2 against Czechia. And then Finland also had to survive against Switzerland in overtime as well. So all the top 4 seeds are still alive. Slovakia also defeated Germany pretty handily, 6-2 yesterday. So you still have all 4 top seeds alive as they head into the semifinals. Coming up tomorrow or no, Friday? Friday is semifinals.
Yeah, which is tomorrow, yes.
Yeah, what am I thinking?
Yes.
I don't know my days.
Yeah, and speaking of U.S. and Canada, we've got the gold medal match today with the U.S. women's hockey team taking on Canada. Now, Tyler, I don't know if you kept up with the women's hockey team, but and I was talking with Kendall Smith yesterday, who was actually in Milan last week watching the Olympics, and she even brought it up to me how dominant the women's hockey team has been. Get this, they've only given up 1 goal in 6 games so far. They are on a 5-game shutout streak going up against Finland, Switzerland. They shut out Canada last Tuesday. And then they beat Italy and Sweden, shutting them out 5-0 and 6-0. Just crazy the type of run they're on. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. I don't care what level of hockey that is. That's honestly insane. So, yeah, the U.S. is going for gold today against Canada, and that should be a really big matchup at 1 o'clock today.
Yeah, 1:10. I believe that'll be on USA. You can watch that. And again, they already defeated Canada once to open up the pool play the other day. I believe Canada either had some players hurt or maybe they were sick there. So Canada, I believe, will have a full roster ready to go this time. But, U.S. the favorite heading in. And hopefully we see them get that gold medal. And obviously same thing for the men coming up to semifinals. They got to survive tomorrow and advanced. I'm assuming gold medal game will be on Sunday, if I'm thinking correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be on Sunday. What do you think that does, hypothetically, for the U.S.? Like, who's the bigger hockey, country? Canada is obviously superior right now, I'd say. But, like, if the U.S. beats Canada in men's and women's hockey, I can't think of the last time that's happened. But
that's some good bragging rights.
To win a gold medal, too, mind you, not just winning a match. Like, winning gold would be quite crazy.
And it would be the first gold since the Miracle on Ice back in 1980, which would obviously be a huge accomplishment there, and obviously love to see it happen. I know Sidney Crosby got hurt yesterday for Canada, and I think he's kind of day-to-day at this point. Obviously, you want to beat Canada at full strength, right? You want to beat them with all their best players available, so there's no built-in excuse there. So we'll see if he's available for their quarterfinal game coming up tomorrow, and we'll see if both teams can obviously advance through and have a U.S.-Canada rematch for the gold coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I just wish the U.S. hockey jerseys were stocked on like Fanatics and all these other sites. Like it's crazy, like how all these jerseys are like off the shelves. Can't even find them anywhere. But that's what comes with the Olympics. It's only once every 4 years, and it's
so they sold out.
So yeah, because I looked up at Quinn Hughes hockey jersey, the guy that scored the goal yesterday.
Yeah.
For the U.S. Sold out. It's sold out everywhere. Now, Fanatics is in some really deep waters right now with everything going on there with their production. But, yeah, I mean, the hockey jerseys, man, it's like you can't find anything right now.
Yeah, I don't trust Fanatics on a lot of things. So much like the Super Bowl stuff, perhaps they weren't prepared going in on how popular those things were.
No,
and that's why they're running into this problem before the Olympics are even over.
No, it's the same thing with the World Baseball Classic coming up. You want an Aaron Judge jersey? Can't find one. It's insane.
By the way, the bronze medal game for women's hockey going on right now. Switzerland and Sweden tied at 1 with a little under a minute and a half to go there in the third period. So looks like they might be heading for overtime too. And again, U.S. and Canada playing for the gold medal coming up today at 1:10. And we'll obviously have that on in the studio and keep you updated as that is going along. But there's your update from the Olympics over there in Italy. That'll do it for the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour coming up next here in the game.
All right, guys, that episode, like all the episodes of the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating, family-owned, family-operated since 1983. For more information, head on over to KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, coolingwithak.com. Give them a call, 803-672-3224. Obviously, hopefully you don't need to call them right now, but if you want to go ahead and get ahead with some preventative maintenance, go ahead and go to that website, schedule an appointment today, or go ahead and give them a call to make sure that HVAC system of yours is running in great shape and that you're not going to need them at a later date. However, if you do, if it's too cold in your home, too warm in your home in the summer, just like I do, just like Chris does, call up Krantz. They're going to come out quickly, efficiently, and help make sure your problem gets fixed. Again, that number, 803-672-3224. That's our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating.
11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on the game. Chris, I'm not sure if you were sneezing or you smelled something bad. What was that face you were making there?
It was trying to hold off a sneeze.
Okay.
Like I was getting concerned that you were going to kick it to me, and I was immediately going to sneeze into the microphone. I just had a little attack.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the look up of the lights thing? That's supposed to make the sneeze go away.
No.
I don't know if changing the angle of your head or how that works, but apparently if you feel it coming, just look up at the lights and this urge to sneeze disappears.
Well, you know when you got to sneeze and then somebody talks to you and then you can't.
Yes.
If it's like that, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Well, thankfully
I needed to get it.
It went away.
I'm good now.
So we're good. Well, if you know where the mute button is on your microphone in case that does end up happening. But it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Another baseball game in the books last night. The most satisfying of the 5 we've seen so far. There is a way you're supposed to win midweek games, right? Like, especially for South Carolina. It doesn't matter who the opponent is from a mid-major conference. You're supposed to win the game to begin with. But it's supposed to be comfortable, right, in the eyes of most fans. And it's not always going to be that way. You're going to have games that are a little bit nip and tuck and a little bit tight. But last night was the most satisfying way you can have a midweek game. Ends in a run roll, kind of a walk-off-ish with Logan Sutter hitting a 2-run shot there in the bottom of the 8th. The offense finally explodes. 17 hits, 12 runs scored, of course. Pitching looked really good again, like all around. The best performance we've seen. Again, it's not against toughest competition, but good to see nonetheless, especially with some of the concerns we had coming away from weekend number 1.
Well, and guys, I think when you're able to have a day where just like so many of your guys are able to get hits and kind of produce in the box score and just feel like you were a part of it, that goes a long way. I feel like just for overall, team camaraderie and just kind of feeling good about yourselves. Sometimes you win a game and, you may walk a team off and everybody's happy and you have momentum, but if 2/3 of the lineup went 0 for 4, then, you're just kind of like, okay, like I am glad we won, but I'd like to contribute to this. So whenever you have 17 hits, man, that means you've got a lot of guys who either had massive days or everybody at least was able to get into the hit column. So you had a little bit of both yesterday, and really, you even had a little bit of early adversity, which I think is a little bit healthy in midweeks. You go down a run or two early, as long as you bounce back and don't let the opponent hang around, and then you put them away and do what you're supposed to do. That is always a good thing. And I think the pitching staff. Again, I'm not crowning anybody yet, like I said yesterday, but I think the pitching staff really did what they were supposed to do against this Gardner-Webb team, and so did the bats, frankly.
How about my T.O. Hanna guy, Will Craddock? 3 for 3.
Build the statue, man.
Go ahead and do it. Reach base all 5 times. This is a guy that they being the South Carolina staff, talked about a lot, and I was listening to Stewart and Derek on the broadcast last night, and they were kind of talking about his role in terms of being in the field, but he was able to just go and just focus on, hey, just go out there and hit, and that's what he did. This is a big kid. Monty Lee's been on record saying that, look, that this is a guy that has like some Ethan Petrie-like qualities. When you hear that comparison, that gets you excited, especially because Monty Lee said he might have even more versatility in the field as far as where he can play. That's a good sign. This is a young kid, big kid who can hit for power. He can obviously get on base. That was a really cool thing to see. So, what does his role look like in terms of expansion as you get into, Clemson series, SEC play? Certainly, good signs all around, because that was the type of offensive explosion that I think fans have wanted to see. Yes, we all understand the competition level, but you kind of did what you feel like you're supposed to do against that team, and that's what you did last night, and a great debut for Craddock.
Well, and for Craddock, it's not just the stat line of 3 for 3 and reaching base all 5 times, including one time, where he got the triple in his second at bat there. But it was the way the ball came off the bat. Like, it's one thing to get it hit. It's another thing to, like, feel it even watching it on TV. Like, wow, he's really putting a charge into it. I think his first 2 hits were like 110 and 108 off the bat. That's not something you teach. You either have that or you don't, and that's going to be very fun. Again, he's going to have his ups and downs, as any freshman, will have, especially in the SEC. But, man, you couldn't have asked for a better debut last night than what Craddock gave us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Tyler, too. Just some guys, the bat, you hear people say, hey, the ball comes off his bat differently or it sounds differently. If it's jumping like that, man, you're going to get a lot of hits. Like, sometimes it's going to be right at somebody, right? But typically, if you hit the ball hard, good things are going to happen. Some people just have an ability to barrel the baseball, and you're not hitting it 110 if you're not barreling the baseball. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of the way Paul Mainieri talked about KJ Scobie last year. And, very early on, he was like, man, there's something about this kid, or I love this kid. And you kind of saw them be willing to put the freshman out there and say, hey, we're going to live with you making a mistake or two here and there because we believe in your ability. And now Scobie comes back, really as one of the core pieces of this team. Man, boys, I think this guy's got to be in the lineup. I'm finding a way to keep him in there. I'm curious to see how this lineup holds up against, SEC pitching, because you actually do have some interesting pieces. I mentioned Tyler Bach earlier. I kind of love this kid, man. Like, he just has a lot of those leadership or lead-off hitter qualities you look for, but also there are some leadership qualities. Energy, has a little. I think he's got a little bit of the clutch gene to him too, from what we've seen so far. So I like that pickup. I think there's some other guys. The Patrick Evans kid, he looks hitterish to me. So there's some pieces to work with. I'll be curious to see if it all comes together, because you're doing this without, Bo Hollins has not gotten off to the start he would have hoped for. So it's not like everybody has clicked yet. There's at least some ability to work with here. We'll see how that continues once they face better opponents.
Hitterish.
Hitterish.
I love that.
Is that a Wesism?
It's got a little hit
No,
to
that's
him.
not a me. That's a thing. Stuart Lake knows what hitterish is.
Oh, I know exactly what it was.
I mean, I get it. I just had never heard it.
You ever heard
that way
hitterish?
before? No.
Nah.
Boys, hitterish is just a look.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I understand what the definition is. That's
last
never
year,
heard that specific phrase.
Scobie a little bit hitterish. That's got the look.
So Evans is hitterish. Anybody else? Well, Craddock.
I mean, Craddock is.
Yeah.
Craddock
Is there like a level
is Craddock
beyond?
the most hitterish?
Yes.
I haven't watched
Are
him
there
enough,
levels to
but-
this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's levels, but yeah.
I mean, but Bach, you're right, man. Like, that was, I think, a big question coming into this season is who can be that table setter. And Bach does have that look because he can, this isn't a guy that's going to hit the most homers on the team, I don't think. He's not built like a Will Craddock or a Bo Hollins or a KJ Scobie. But, he can hit them out, as he's shown. Got 20 ABs. He's got 6 hits. He's got a double. He's got a homer. He's driven in 6. He's walked twice. He's gotten hit by 2 pitches. He's just struck out 3 times. So he's a guy that can do. He's hitting 300 right now. So he's getting on base, which is exactly what you want to see. And he obviously had some big hits in that opener, in that opening weekend series as well. So that's another good sign. There's been so far very, very early in the season, just 5 games, of course, but there's been, kind of some good, some not so good in there as you continue to try to feel this thing out. But I'm with you, Wes. I'm very curious, like, what does the, when I say final lineup, what you go with more often than not, like, who are your guys? And we know who some of them are going to be. Bach's going to be one. Where does, Craddock, for instance, fit into this thing?
Yeah, and you got some, Hollins not hitting to the standard he would want yet, but it's 16 ABs. So the thing about 16 ABs in this game is, like, all right, you're hitting 063 right now because you have Let's see, what is that? I lost it. One hit in 16 at bats, but you go 4 for your next 4, and all of a sudden, you're 5 for 20, and now you're hitting 250, and you're right back on track. So small numbers, small sample size can really mislead you in baseball, but those guys obviously will try to get going. The Ethan Lozama kid, another lefty, man, he's got a nice swing as well. It hasn't resulted in results yet, but he's hitting 176. But there's clearly a nice swing there. I think the key, though, and I think we see this in the portal era for me. You want to get into a little bit of roster management. This idea, I think we've seen this in men's basketball. We saw this with the baseball team last year. You get a ton of additions to your team, and they all kind of played pretty well at their prior stops, and you're kind of going, well, we're going to let them fight it out and let the cream rise to the top. It's great in theory. It means you're going to have some depth, but you want for the cream to actually rise to the top. You don't want to be going your entire season wondering, who are my best 9? Who, in basketball, who are my best 5? Like, you want for those elite guys or those top guys to truly, like, okay, I have to be on the field, find a way to get me on the field. I think it's one game, but Craddock made a statement that you say, all right, we're going to find a way to get this guy in the lineup until he hits freshman struggles or whatever, and then even if he does, we might still leave him in the lineup. But I don't think you want to be going your entire season. Didn't it feel, Tyler, like all last year we were seeing a different lineup, a different order? Well, not winning, let's try something else. I'm all for versatility. I'm all for depth. But ultimately, wouldn't it be nice to, like, let's plug Tyler Bach in at leadoff. Let's plug Scobie in as the 2-hole guy. Let's plug Tal in there as the 3 or 4 hitter. And let's find a little bit of continuity in this group. And I know it's still early, but I just don't want to see it become what we saw last year in terms of, like, your rotations, for lack of a better word. It's not a word you normally use in baseball, though.
Yeah, there's a difference between rotating your lineup because you need to, and or rotating your lineup because you have to, and rotating your lineup because you want to. It's better to have more options to work with than less. And again, you're like what you see out of Craddock so far. How can he factor in, especially as Hollins is coming off that injury? I know it was only 1 at bat, but we talked about it with Stuart Lake. Sutter finally got back on the horse and got a hit last night. What does that do for him to become your everyday second baseman, hopefully going forward, and all that kind of stuff? So we'll see. I think this weekend, playing against varying different opponents in the service academies will give us a good idea of maybe finalizing what that at least starting 9 will be going into next weekend series against Clemson, which, again, as we talk about, is the ultimate litmus test before SEC play. And one of the concerns coming away from the weekend was situational hitting for South Carolina. They've improved on that in the last couple days. 5-11 with runners in scoring position against Wofford, 4-14 last night against Gardner-Webb, 7-20 with guys on base against Wofford, 8-21 with guys on base against Gardner-Webb. So those things that were a concern in the first 3 games, starting to work out the kinks a little bit. I get it. The competition level is not up to snuff for what you're going to see on a week-in, week-out basis, but it is trending in the right direction, which is good to see.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you gotta keep it going, and you're gonna have to keep it going with what you've done in the past 2 games against, again, a lot better competition. So it will certainly be a challenge. But I do think this is a group that you are still trying to figure out some things. What is the best lineup? You got some guys that, like you said, Wes, a Beau Hollins. Is this going to be the Beau Hollins, what we've seen through the first several games that we see all year? If I had to guess, probably not. And then I think you have some guys that can kind of continue on their current trajectory with what they've done as well. So, again, I think I'm looking at this thing last year, Clemson game, Clemson series, huge litmus test. Same deal this year for both of those clubs. We're going to walk away feeling like we know a lot more about both those teams.
Gamecock baseball back in action tomorrow afternoon, taking on Army. 2 o'clock first pitch over at Founders Park. Pre-game coverage starting at 1:45 right here on 107.5 The Game. We'll dive into Wes and Chris's conversation with Coach Beamer. What are areas he's identified that he needs to change this offseason? That's coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, everybody, let's tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. You hear about them daily here on The Game. It's because we absolutely love what Michael and Nathan have done at our own homes from a tech and audiovisual standpoint. They've been to Wes's home. They've been to mine. They can do the same for you. Anything that you need from a tech standpoint, they are a true one-stop shop. So if you need something as simple as getting a TV mounted, they can tell you what the best brands are in 2026. They can get the equipment for you. You don't have to go to the big box stores, bad service. People don't know what they're doing. You don't have to scour the internet for their thousands of options. You can just reach out to Michael and Nathan at 803-948-8327. They can source it and install it for you. Of course, they can do things that are a lot bigger in scope than that. They can help you with your Wi-Fi signal around your home. Trick out that man cave or outdoor space that you have been dreaming of. Integrated Media Columbia for examples of their past work on Instagram or Facebook, or 803-948-8327 Integrated Media.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. We'll get into what Coach Beamer had to say to Wes and Chris with their sit-down interview here in just a moment. But first, coming up tomorrow, Blackberry Smoke going to be over at the Township Auditorium for a one-night-only show. And we have tickets for you on our Firehouse Subs text line at 803 803-404-6100. Text in right now if you want to, or text in the word Barry right now to 803-404-6100 if you want to win tickets to go see Blackberry Smoke again tomorrow night over at Township Auditorium. If you don't win tickets, but you still want to go see them, you can get your tickets now at townshipauditorium.com. Again, text Barry to 803-404-6100 to win those tickets on our text line. Of course, anytime we hear from Coach Beamer, we're always going to dive into it in the offseason. It's going to be a while before we get another press conference, but you guys have gotten a chance to sit down and talk to him here recently. You guys have been putting out stories periodically about what you guys talked about with him. Overall, again, we'll dive into the specifics of one of your articles here in a second. Overall, what's the vibe you're getting from Beamer, meeting with him one-on-one of how this offseason's gone so far and where the optimism is going into this fall?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it really even before the offseason began that, hey, there were plans in order to try to fix this thing. And I think most of the fans have been happy with the progress so far in terms of offseason. You know, you talk about coaching changes, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe some difference in approach on a few things. Not that you're just going to blow it up and start over, but much like, I mean, we've compared it to going into that 2024 season, how you said, all right, what was being done in certain areas obviously did not work. So how can you improve them? Obviously going out into the transfer portal and the guys that you went out and targeted there was a big part of that too. But, you know, Chris, I know there are kind of some specifics that he went through as well on what he felt like needed to be changed or just upgraded going into what is, you know, going to be a key 2026 season, obviously.
Yeah, the coaching changes are the easiest thing to point to, right? Changing out 3 of the main, you know, on-field coaches for going into this season on the offensive side of the ball. That was a big thing. Of course, now he'll have a special teams coach to replace, too. That was not the case at the time we talked to him. But people are going to focus on that in the roster, right? And Beamer did bring up the roster because that was a point of emphasis for them to get older, but not just get older. You can't just go take, hey, we're going to go take 25, 50-year seniors. You know, are they any good? You know, that has to be an important part of this too. So he kind of outlined, hey, we wanted to get more experience, number one. He said many times, and he said it when we sat down with him, you know, we were a veteran team in 24. We were not as much a veteran team in 25. So in 26, let's try to be a veteran team, but let's also try to find guys who have, you know, proven experience, preferably at the Power 4 level, but if it's at a different level, that's fine. These things into the same category. There are really 3 main things, but you look at the roster and the production, the experience, but also the leadership. So he's looking for more leadership in that roster. And Beamer said, look, frankly, he pushed back against the notion that they didn't have like any leadership on the team, but wasn't enough. No, and so he talked about how he wanted to create ways for guys to give them kind of a mechanism, I guess you could say, to create more leadership going into this year's team.
So let's dive into these specific things individually here, and you can read Beamer's full quotes on the article on GamecockCentral.com for the roster, age, and production. Again, 2 years ago, as you mentioned, this team was very experienced guys that had played a lot of football, and you went out and seemingly addressed that in the portal. Now, again, not all these guys are going to play. Some of them are going to be depth pieces and aren't going to see the field quite as much, but a good deal of them are. Again, we look at a guy like Jacarius Peak that has played a lot of football at NC State. It's going to come in and play one of the most important roles on this team. But also, in addition to that, you have so many key players returning that are also veterans as well. And you look at the big 3 with quarterback, with Nick Harbor, and then you have Dylan Stewart on edge. These guys have played a lot of college football, 3 full years in all their instances at South Carolina so far, and Harper played a little bit as a true freshman there as well. So these guys have played a lot of football in addition to what you bring in from the portal. And also you have guys like Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley coming back for another year that played a lot of football a season ago and just has experience of being around the game for a long time. So you look up and down this roster, and that's not guaranteeing success like you had with Indiana by any means, but you feel good that you just have a lot of guys that have seen and been in a lot of situations in football that hopefully lead to the success that you're looking for on the field.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And I think the key is to try to kind of meld together the guys you've added from the portal and then, of course, retaining the proper guys and then put it all together in the right scheme. And, you know, we talked about it yesterday. I guess it was the ESPN FPI efficiencies. Special teams, you were top 10. Defense, you were top 30. I think 28 and 7, maybe respectively there. And offense, you were 88 in the country. So very clearly, and here's the thing, maybe it doesn't play out exactly that way on defense next year or on special teams next year. So none of these things are static, and you do have to go still play the games. And everybody else is trying to improve as well. It's nobody's just staying the same. Everybody's getting better or worse, but a lot of your resources, a lot of your energy, a lot of your effort is into trying to find a way to fix this offense. And a lot of that is ultimately going to fall on the shoulders of Kendall Briles. And, you know, we've talked extensively, honestly, about him all offseason. We won't really know much of anything. Maybe little things will leak here and there. Maybe we'll get some, I guess, notes on where things are there in the spring kind of moving forward. But I think that's going to be the biggest difference and the thing that everybody maybe pays most attention to this season is, hey, what does this offense look like now with a completely different approach on that side of the ball? It could not be more opposite than what you were doing with Shula.
Again, the roster itself, very experienced, very veteran. We'll see how that translates on the field. The next point we'll get into on the other side, what Beamer calls football 101 and the knowledge of the game, because I feel like that's a very overlooked part of especially this portal era of college football. And with that coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game, going over the conversation y'all had with Coach Beamer and 3 areas of emphasis that he's looking to change in this offseason. We talked about the roster age and production, and by all accounts, that seems to have been done pretty well when it comes to what you've retained and obviously what you've brought back in the portal. But the most interesting one to me is what y'all have dubbed Football 101. And I'm not going to read Coach Beamer's direct quote here. I want to encourage people to go and obviously read the article on Gamecock Central. But he talks about really focusing on the fundamentals of football, something they've done throughout the month of January, because that's one of those things that really kind of maybe slipped through the cracks a little bit last year. Not saying that these guys don't know football, and most of them have been playing since they were 5 years old, but there were areas last year, and I'm not going to pick on the offensive line, but that was an area that it really came to its head that they were just making kind of boneheaded mistakes, the pre-snap penalties. Boaz Stanley had played a lot of football before he got here, but the guy couldn't get snaps off to save his life at times. Like, that was something that maybe wasn't as much of an emphasis in the offseason as maybe it needed to be, because you just assume with guys with experience, they kind of know what's up. But it sounds like, you're tearing it down to the bare bones, going over the basic fundamentals. I don't know if there was a PowerPoint presentation in January about, hey, this is a football, and you score 6 points with a touchdown and 3 points with a field goal, but making sure no stone unturned is the right way to respond to a 4-8 season to ensure that the next season is better, hopefully.
Tyler, you fired up over there?
A little bit.
There's a little bit of just...
I also just drank some caffeine in the break, so
a
I'm
little
charged
bit
up right
of
here.
lingering frustration that Rashawn Lee couldn't remain South Carolina center for the rest of
listen,
time.
guys are getting 9th and 10 years of eligibility. He should have applied for it, man. He could have gotten it. I would fight for him in court today if I could.
I believe that. You'd go right now, wouldn't
It'd
you?
be hilarious. Like Tyler testifies in the hearing. It's my favorite player.
For some reason, when Tyler just gave his quick version of what football is, my brain went back. Do y'all remember in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, the Baylor player who was asked how they could get out rebounded?
Yeah.
And he goes,
They grabbed the ball.
they
Got
grabbed
his
the
hands.
ball and pulled it down more times than us. So they
the
rebounded
basics.
more than us. The look on that guy's face is etched in my brain.
Yeah. We make things too hard sometimes.
Yeah, but I do think, in all seriousness, it's kind of a worthy point, because all these guys are coming from such different backgrounds. You lose kind of that idea of, hey, most of our players have been in our system for 2 years on average or 3 years on average. What do you guys think 10 years ago? Like, you bring in 25 freshmen, right? And you had roster turnover. You've always had roster turnover in college, right? But if you just said, what is the average length of a random team that the players have been within that program 15 years ago compared to now? If you're South Carolina, when summer hits and all the guys from this cycle are in, you're going to have 40-plus new players on your roster. So that number is constantly dropping. And so I do think there's maybe an assumption of, hey, these guys probably know this, they probably know that, but maybe they don't. And do you know the why? And one thing Beamer brought up, and maybe the casual fan, hey, why is that an illegal formation or not an illegal formation?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that receiver eligible? Or if they go unbalanced, that receiver actually can't run down the field and go out for a pass. You may look at it and you may be told, oh, this is an illegal formation. Okay, tell me why. So I think there are some intricacies in football if you understand the why. Like, you see receivers sometimes, that communication where you can kind of see it play out in real time. There's 2 receivers kind of on the outside, and they're talking about, wait, we're both on the line of scrimmage right now. One of us needs to be off the line. And if you have the base understanding of why one of you has to be off the line, you can figure that out in real time without you might have even forgotten what the actual formation was. If you just say, hey, one of us has to be off the line, maybe you don't get a penalty there, when otherwise you might have. So I do think understanding the why and not just memorizing formations, for example, has value.
Yeah, and when we posted this on our forums, a lot of it was, well, are they going to work on penalties? We were one of the most penalized teams. Yeah, I mean, that is part of what you're saying. I mean, an illegal formation is actually a penalty, right? A lot of people are thinking of, false starts, snap infraction, jump off sides, right? Some of that is technical things to clean up, but some of it does go into the why. And Beamer expanded on it a little. It was, yes, it's more football 101, especially for the younger players, but it's also tweaking how they're doing some things in practice with how they prep. And a lot of that is stuff that, we'll never know, we'll never really notice. If the results are better, we'll just chalk it up to personnel or good coaching, quote unquote, good coaching. But some of these things are intended to, hey, what are the problem areas and why were they, go back to the why for the coaches. Why did we struggle on this? And one thing Beamer clearly identified, I mean, literally his quote was, I knew that if we had gone 12-0 or 0-12, we needed to do a better job of introducing and doubling down on these fundamental concepts. And so when you're talking about penalties too, I mean, that's fundamentals. You false start, your fundamentals have failed you in some way. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's getting up on the board, watching more tape, diving into what's a penalty and why, all these things that work together, it's not like they ignored those things in the past. Don't get that twisted, but if you're looking for reasons of why did last season go the way that it did, obviously you want any of those problems to be corrected, and this is one of the things he's identified to try to go after.
Well, and as you get into the last season, when you see the penalty problems you're having, stuff happening on the offensive line, it's harder to correct that once the season has begun because, again, you only get 20 hours with these guys. You're practicing, focusing on the next opponent, implementing game plans and all that kind of stuff. This is the time to address that. As you mentioned, the month of January has been focusing on doing a lot of those things because you have the time to really kind of break it down to the studs and kind of start from scratch with these guys. And that continues on throughout the offseason through spring practice and summer and fall camp and all those kind of things. You can't just suddenly start doing this in the fall and expect it to be different by the next game. Like these are the kind of things you need to address off the jump. And it sounds like that's what they've done so far. And hopefully that yields results when the fall rolls around.
Yeah, I think every year, man, you try to identify, even if it's the smallest little advantage or disadvantage, what can you identify to bring your program forward? And, Chris's point, like, maybe none of us even notice that this helped. But if it helps you avoid 2 penalties and those penalties result in a touchdown on a drive instead of a punt and you win a game because of it, then, it was worth it. And, a lot of these guys are trained on Madden and NCAA football in their young sort of football viewing experiences. So, and there's, Tyler, I think there's value to that, actually, learning what different coverages are to an extent. But there are certain things that are automatic in the video games that you actually have to go physically do in real life football.
Yeah, I've never encountered an illegal snap on NCAA, college football, Madden, or anything like that. I don't think those penalties are typically in that game.
No illegal formations,
Yeah.
I don't think. Now, you can get illegal man downfield if you hold on to the RPO too long.
Yeah,
so.
that's a little rare, but that is in there. But yeah, the video games don't teach you everything. Good at clock management, not necessarily when it comes to all the fundamentals and penalties and stuff like that. But again, you can go to Gamecock Central, read all of Beamer's full thoughts on that, and we'll dive into more of what y'all had to talk about with him coming up tomorrow, because there's multiple things y'all have put out in reference to those conversations. And good to get his insight as we, again, aren't going to hear from him for a little bit as we go through the offseason. On the other side, though, what's the most unique interaction you guys have had with the head coach in your media careers? I want you to think about it, because we have a shining example of one reporter and a head coach butting heads the other day. We'll dive into that coming up next to wrap up the hour. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. Boy, coaches talking at press conferences has been a hot-button topic for about the past week or so. Jerome Tang obviously fired with cause, according to K-State, for comments he made about his team getting blown out by Cincinnati last week. And then the latest headline, Mick Cronin, head basketball coach for UCLA, getting a little testy with reporters after they got dominated by number 15 Michigan State the other day.
What was your thoughts in the student section chanting Booker's name?
I could give a rat's ass about the other team's student section.
I just meant the overall the way that you
I would like to give you a kudos for the worst question I've ever been asked.
Did you like
You should take it.
the preparation of
Do you really think I care about the other team's
No, I don't.
student
I don't
section?
think you care about the other.
Are you raising your voice at me?
No, I'm just.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Come on, dude.
No reason.
Come on. Yes, you are. Everybody's standing here listening to you. Everybody. This is on camera. They can hear you. I answered the question. I could give a rat's ass about the other team's student section. I coach UCLA. I don't care about Michigan State students. I mean, who cares?
I think you care a little bit with the way you answer that question. Things are not going well right now for Mick Cronin UCLA as they are sitting 9-6, ninth in the Big Ten as of right now, and having getting their butts handed to them in the past couple games when it came to playing some of the best teams in the conference. I don't know if that was a student reporter or who that was, but he got caught, unfortunately, in the crosshairs of a very unhappy Mick Cronin after their loss the other night to Michigan State.
Didn't sound like a student. What was going on with the student section?
So I forget specifically, but you saw the player that he threw out of the game, right? Like Mick Cronin threw his own player out.
Threw his own player out, even though he wasn't ejected.
Yeah, that guy started at Michigan State and ended up at UCLA. So I think it had something to do with that. Don't quote me on that. But there was something that they were doing in reference to UCLA for the Michigan State student section to try and cause distraction. And, is Mick Cronin going to care about that? Not necessarily, but it's the doubling down of going back to that answer about how much he doesn't care about it, which tells us
he does protest too much.
I think you do care about it. Like, all you had to do was say, no, I don't care what they think. Next question, and we wouldn't be talking about this. But then are you raising your voice at me like he's your dad or something like that? It got really weird really fast.
Yeah, and so first of all, it wasn't. The question wasn't in a vacuum. Like, when I first heard the question, I'm like, that is kind of a stupid question, but who cares? Stupid questions get asked every day. But it wasn't just in a vacuum. Hey, tell me about the opponent's student section. Like, there was some context to it. But if you don't want to answer, if you're ticked off about the game, okay, cool. Just leave it at that. The just hilarious part about it was him doubling down on the guy, raising his voice and saying there's cameras. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but the only person who raised their voice was Mick.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a tone at all from the reporter. I think he was trying to, he basically kept the conversation going and then got ticked off even more when the reporter responded to him continuing the conversation. And, man, I know these are coaches and I know people put them on pedestals, but that's a grown man you're talking to. Like, that's not your player. Right?
I mean, Mick has a history, though,
He's had a lot of
He has some crash outs sometimes.
Careful, he'll call and cuss you out.
If he wants to call in, that'd be great. Great radio if he happens to be listening from Los Angeles. I mean, but don't you think UCLA their administration is like sitting around watching and waiting what's going to happen with the K-State thing? Because they're like, all right.
Might have cause here.
Because Mick, he's done the whole thing where he calls his players soft. And, he's had several of those instances. So they're sitting there going, ooh, buddy, let's see if this works for K-State. Probably not.
Have you guys ever caught an ire of a coach or anybody else when asking questions in an interview or press conference or anything like that? Maybe not to that degree, but has anybody gotten testy with you?
I mean, my completely different way, but I do have kind of a funny. So one of the first camps that I covered, I don't even remember what year it was. It was when Spurrier was here, and they actually used to have camp. I think it was over near where the Rice and the Doty and all that are near the track. And so we were over there, and, camps are open.
We're talking about high school camp.
High school football
not
camp.
like
high school
preseason
prospect camp. Yeah, where they go and they work guys out, and they'll offer guys, all that deal. And so I'm over there and watching some guys, and Spurrier comes by. And, at that point, we don't know each other or anything. I think he might have actually come up and shook my hand or something. But he kind of came up, asked who I was with. And I'm like, yeah, Chris Clark, Gamecock Central. Gamecock Central? Okay. Like, are you not supposed to be here? And I kind of laughed.
Yeah.
I thought he was giving me, and there was another assistant coach over there, and he laughed. He was standing off to the side, like fully enjoying this.
Yeah.
He was like, this was very entertaining for him because he was sitting back going, all right, we're about to have like a Spurrier moment. So he's kind of enjoying. And
I can picture one of two people who are the assistant coach right now, actually.
Oh, yeah. And so he's over there grinning. And so I laugh, but Spurrier, I look over at Spurrier, he's not laughing.
Just deadpan.
And he goes, I'm serious. No. He said, like, I don't guess I'll kick you out. And I kind of laughed again. Looked at the assistant, like, what is this? And he's laughing a little bit. And Spurrier's like, no, I'm serious. Okay, well, I don't guess. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? Like, the first interaction I've ever had with Steve Spurrier. And he's basically kind of saying I shouldn't be. Well, I mean, he did say I shouldn't be there. And I'm going.
Now, was that for you or for Gamecock Central in general?
Beats me.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
did he not find Gamecock Central reputable at that time or something?
No. I mean,
it was a media thing, I think. Like,
he just thought maybe
there were rules at some point about whether media should be able to attend prospect camps, but they're open to the public, so
we could be there.
So there's really nothing you can't say, hey, everyone can come to this
except media,
but the media can't.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So and I don't know what the.
Was your mind going to make your mind speeds up on you when you realize, this guy's joking with me. It's Steve Spurrier, and then you're like, oh, he's not joking. Was your mind like going like?
Oh, it's very fast.
How do I react?
I don't guess I'll kick you out. And I'm like, oh, it's Steve Spurrier. Like, he's just clowning me a little bit, but he was serious. Like, all right. And he just kind of walked off and left it, and then the assistant's over there just cackling, I'm like, okay. I mean,
that's a heck of a way to meet him.
It was.
Yeah. How about you, Wes? Anything?
I mean, we don't really do the whole press conference thing, Chris or I, but once I wrote that South Carolina was behind on a recruit and was like maybe third or fourth, and the coach, I mean, it's all off the record, obviously, but the coach, the assistant who was recruiting him called me and was like, why did you say that? And I'm like, well, because it's true. He's like, why do you have to say that? Why can't you just be positive? And I was like, well, if I'm positive and I say y'all are leading and then he goes somewhere else, for one, everybody's going to see he's going somewhere else. And two, I look like an idiot. Well, why can't you just be positive? I was like, I don't think we're going to agree on this.
We'll just have to shake hands and move on.
Glass half empty Wes Mitchell over here.
Yeah, seriously.
Negative. Mr. Negativity.
Like, okay, man. All right. Cool. This is awkward. Cool. Bye.
Have a great day.
So, yeah. As long as you didn't raise your voice at those guys. That's all that matters.
That guy didn't raise his voice.
He didn't raise his voice. Mick Cronin rose his voice.
He seemed very calm, actually, considering.
Extremely calm.
In a way, he almost kind of laughed at the response to the question, and I guess that sounds like you're raising your voice, or you're not.
Okay, I'll take it. It's like, yeah, you'll take it.
Yeah.
And he just keeps going. Like, all right, man, this.
Mick Cronin may be the whiniest coach in America right now. Him and Nate Oates
There's some competition, though.
There is.
There's a lot of competition.
There is, and we'll see if UCLA
Vic Schaefer.
Vic Schaefer. We'll see if UCLA can fire him for cause anytime soon. We'll see. I'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show up next on your Thursday on the Game.